We're taking a break from our series in Romans, Exodus chapter 3, reading the first 15 verses. This is the word of God. Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now, behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I, that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? He said, But I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. Then Moses said to God, If I come to the people of Israel and say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, What is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, Say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, Say this to the people of Israel, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. How well do we know the God whom we worship? That may sound like a strange thing to ask, given that every week we sit under his word, we listen to his word, we pray his word, we sing his word, and we endeavor to respond to his word. That's what we do. And so one would expect, I think, that we should be getting to know this God whom we worship more and more. But I need to tell you that I've become quite convicted over the last couple of years in my own reading and learning that I don't actually dwell enough on who God is. And I think that has a knock-on effect in our congregation, that together we don't actually dwell enough on who God is. What we do focus on pretty well is what God has done. So I'm quite sure if you've been part of our church for any length of time, you will know that we never want to lose sight of what God has done for us in Jesus Christ. But it strikes me that we don't really think enough about the wonder of who God is. And so this morning, we think about those words of God to Moses in Exodus chapter 3. I am who I am. Moses wanted to know what he should say to the people of Israel if they asked for God's name. God had just told him that he had heard the cries of his people in Egypt, and that Moses was going to have to go to Pharaoh and bring them out. And Moses was like, what? Who me? What? Who am I? I couldn't possibly rock up to Pharaoh and tell him that. But God said to him, I'll be with you, and I'll prove that I have sent you, because when you've brought the people out, you're going to serve me on this mountain. And again, Moses was like, whoa, hang on. What shall I say your name is if the people of Israel ask? And apparently at this point, Moses was unfamiliar with God's name, and he reckoned that the Israelites might be as well. Maybe God's name had fallen out of use over the centuries of slavery in Egypt. Yeah, they knew about the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. But who really is he? People around them worshipped so many gods. So what is the essence of the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob? God, what is your name? In the ancient Near East, a name was a lot more than just a name. To know a name was to know something really essential about that person. I am who I am, God said to Moses. That is my name. A name which in our English Bibles is translated as Lord in capital letters. I am who I am. We hear that and we think, whoa, that's a little bit mysterious, isn't it? What does that mean? There are a number of things we might say about that name, but here's one that I want us to focus on this morning, and that is what theologians have called the doctrine of the simplicity of God. The simplicity of God. Don't worry if you've never heard of that. I assure you that it is not a new teaching. It is right through church history. Indeed, we see it in our own confession of faith, the Westminster Confession, chapter 2, where it says that God is a most pure spirit without body, parts, or passions. That is the doctrine of the simplicity of God that I want to unpack this morning. If I were to call you simple today, you would probably take it as an insult, right? I might find it the same if you were to say that of me. But when we call God simple, it is a term that, rightly understood, glorifies him. It is the teaching that God is not the sum of many parts. A rocket is the sum of many parts. I'm no rocket scientist, but I think it's fairly safe to say that the building of a rocket to go up to space is very complicated. There's a whole lot of parts that need to come together for that rocket to be a rocket. And I would not fancy having to build one. But God is not the sum of many parts. He is not a Lego God. I don't know if you ever played with Lego. God is not a Lego God. Yes, he is incomprehensible in his greatness. He is infinitely more mind-blowing than any space rocket. But he is without any parts. He is simply one single, pure essence. The godness of God. I am who I am. You want to know what I'm like, Moses? But I'm not like anyone or anything. Other things become what they are, from the composition of this or that. But I don't become Moses. I just am. I am the ultimate reality. I am without beginning or end. I am eternally who I am. As I was trying to say earlier with the kids' talk, God is not like a pie that we can slice up into different pieces. I stole that illustration from an American theologian called Matthew Barrett, who's written a great little book on the attributes of God called None Greater. None greater, really worth getting. Anyway, he points out that many Christians talk about God today as if love and holiness and omnipotence were different parts of God, as if, as we might imagine, love to be 10% of God, and maybe holiness is 15%, and omnipotence is 7%, and so on. And of course, nobody actually talks about percentages, and yet it would appear that there are Christians who believe that some attributes of God are more important than the others. And they normally say that about love, don't they? You know, love has got to be the biggest piece of the pie, surely the most important part of God. But God has no parts. And therefore, even to speak of having different attributes is really not that helpful. Because in reality, God is his attributes. As Augustine explained in about 400 AD, every attribute is identical with God's essence. You know, it's not like God has or possesses almighty power as if it was a thing he could take to himself. No, he simply is almighty. That's who he is. He does not have all knowledge. He simply is all-knowing. He does not have truth. He is truth. He does not have goodness. He is goodness. He does not have love. He is love. These are not things apart from himself that become attached to his essence. No, they are his essence. They are simply who he is. He did not say to Moses, I have what I have. He said, I am who I am. And if that seems a wee bit esoteric, let me bring it right down to earth. Because just think about how different this is from you and me. You know, when I was growing up, my family used to say that I was horizontal. Really laid back. They don't say that about me anymore, though, I don't think. Because I'm not like that anymore, I don't think. Somewhere along the line, I began to get really uptight about A, B, or C. But we're all like that, aren't we? We're all becoming something. You know, we might lose a quality we used to have, or we might gain a quality we did not have before. You know, we might say about someone, what has happened to that person? Because, you know, they used to be so full of compassion. They used to be so full of gentleness. But boy, they're not anymore. I wonder what happened. They seem so hard and bitter these days. And, you know, we might even find that kind of change even from one day to the next in ourselves. You might be characterized one day by real wisdom, and then tomorrow someone might have to say to you, boy, brother, what happened to your wisdom of yesterday? Where did it go today? You see, you and I are not our attributes. Whatever attributes we may have, they are not the very essence of who we are. They come and go, except for the fact that we are finite, which is exactly why we are so changeable. You and I cannot say, I am who I am, because who knows what we're going to be from one day to the next every moment, you know. We're always becoming. We learn, we grow, we develop, we add this, add that, lose this, lose that. For better, for worse, we are people who change. But thank God that he does not change. Thank God that he is never becoming. Thank God that he cannot become anything other than he always is. I am who I am, yesterday, today, and forever. He is all that he is, all the time. There is no potential in God. If there was, he would not be perfect, would he? He would be lacking. He would have needs. He would be incomplete. But our God is perfect. And the doctrine of the simplicity of God, that he has no parts, guards this truth. A simple God without parts is by definition perfect and infinite and immutable and eternal. And so although we talk about different attributes in God, they're really not different things. Not when it comes to God. His simplicity is his perfection, which is his infinity, which is his immutability, which is his faithfulness, which is his goodness, which is his justice, which is his wisdom, which is his truth, which is his knowledge, which is his power, which is his sovereignty. These are not different things in God. These are, in fact, one simple essence, one single reality. And if we don't get that, then we're not going to understand any of his attributes. We might even pit one against the other, People do that, claiming that his wrath is a contradiction of his love, or that his sovereignty is a contradiction of his goodness. When the reality is that God cannot be divided against himself. God is simple. God is one. God is not a complexity of competing, divisible forces, each fighting for the upper hand. No. When I sat down and tried to work out what attribute I would look at each month, I ran into real difficulty because, in a way, they're all identical with each other. As one theologian put it, God, in a sense, only has one attribute, and that is his godness. You cannot divide it up. Does that mean, therefore, that we cannot talk about different attributes? Well, think of it like this. Look at that beautiful window behind me. When the light comes shining through this beautiful window, there's so many colors. It's glorious. And yet, for all the colors, it is one single ray of light. And that is what the godness of God is like. One single essence. And yet, as far as our vision goes, it is shining in many colors, appearing as one attribute and then another, when actually it is just one single divine glory of the great I am. And if you want to see his glorious sparkle today in all its many colors, you know what we do? We fix our eyes on Jesus. We fix our eyes on him. Because in his life and death and resurrection, he is the wisdom of God and the righteousness of God and the love of God and the justice of God and the mercy of God. When he hangs there on the cross, when he hung there on the cross, his body broken and his blood poured out. There, supremely there, we see the godness of God shining, his wrath, his mercy, wisdom, justice, love, righteousness. It is one single reality on the cross. It's displayed there. And it proclaims that if God is for us, then all of God is for us. As A.W. Tozer wrote, it isn't that mercy is pleading for the sinner and justice is trying to beat him to death. No. There's no part of God that is for us. All of God is for us. And when we put our trust in Jesus, we come into fellowship with this awesome God, and his Spirit comes into our lives, not so that we can have a part of God. No, as we've seen, there are no parts. Instead, as Paul writes, the fruit of the Spirit, the singular fruit of the Spirit, is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. If we have the Spirit of God, then all of this has been born into our lives, and one day we will be like Christ, his life fully shining out from us. Our time is gone, but know this morning that because God is simple, we can lean on his everlasting arms. Do it. Lean on him. Know that he is for us. He is who he is, and he is for us always.